Did you know hidden deep in the tunnels of the Death Star is a Dianoga eating trash just like in episode 4? The Dianoga doesn't really do anything and the trash compactor room doesn't close like in the films, but it's still a pretty cool detail. Although the room's a bit hidden, the trash compactor is on the defense sector map in Battlefront 1. Since these creatures can basically eat most things including garbage, the Empire breeds them for their shuttles, which is why they have containers of these things next to the trash compactor areas on the Sallust refinery map. And although the original Battlefront 2 didn't have them in the trash compactor, it did include the small vent from the prison area leading to the room. Also, the walls can press together, killing anyone inside. And for some reason, destroying the control switch doesn't stop the walls from moving. But the reboot's Battlefront 2 didn't include a trash compactor room since it's the Death Star 2 from episode 6. Speaking of which, you can see the Death Star 2 in the sky on Endor, but it disappears in the survivors version of the map because it takes place after the rebels blow up the space station. And the Death Star doesn't appear in the sky on Scarif until the last phase of the infiltration game mode, which is so cool since it also jumped from hyperspace in the films just before it blasted the base. Looking outside the Death Star in Battlefront 2, we can see the forest moon of Endor off in the distance, while in the first game it was orbiting this planet, which is, according to developers at the time, one we haven't seen before. It kinda looks like a mix of Geonosis and Jeddah from Rogue One, which is where that city was when they tested the giant laser beam in the films. Plus, this DLC came out 4 months before that movie was released, so maybe this was an earlier version of Jeddah that got changed later on in the film's development, since as seen in Jedi Survivors, it basically looks the same without rings. Interestingly, one of Saturn's small moons, called Mimas, has a crater that looks very similar to the Death Star's laser plate. This could have been the inspiration for the Geonosians creating the plans and starting early development of the space station. You probably didn't notice, hidden in the asteroid field of this mysterious planet is a small Exogorth, which is that big monster from episode 5. The Exogorth is to the left of the rebel spawn, but can't be reached since it's too far out of bounds. These slugs reach maturity around 10 meters, so the one in episode 5 is apparently what happens when the growth process goes uninterrupted, reaching up to 900 meters. Also, you probably forgot that they included B-Wings and TIE Defenders as reinforcement ships to the space battle phase. Sadly though, they were never used again even in the sequel, and to my knowledge, all of these only appear on the first phase of this map specifically. Speaking of which, both the Death Star and Scarif DLCs for Battlefront 1 included a 3-phase game mode where players would destroy the defenses of an Imperial blockade, allowing a rebel frigate to fly in and rescue R2-D2 from the Imperials before blowing up the Death Star, which is one of the coolest concepts for any game mode in the franchise, or try to get a U-Wing through the planetary shield gate of Scarif to progress to the planet, where the rebels cause a diversion in the base to grab secret intel and evacuate. But unlike other Walker and Galactic Assault battles, the devs stated that these modes aren't considered canon since they divert from the original story to incorporate a more fun gameplay experience. For example, the trench run in episode 4 was mainly just a straight line, which can be seen in-game, but the mission requires you to go through a series of different twists and turns to make it harder for the player. They also put in a few structures seen from the Death Star 2 trench run in episode 6, which isn't accurate either. And if you look in the distance on Scarif, you'll find regular AT-ATs with the cargo bodies of the AT-ACTs. Probably because they didn't have time to create an entirely new model, but Rogue One only showed the cargo variant on Scarif, which are around 10 meters taller than their assault counterparts. Plus, it goes without saying that the rebels didn't do a skirmish to rescue R2-D2, but still is a cool feature since this was the first time being able to play as an astromech in the Battlefront franchise. On that topic, there's a lot of droids scattered around both Death Star maps, mainly Imperial astromechs introduced in the films. It's cool how they come in all sorts of colors, usually rocking black, white, grey, and sometimes even orange as the case with R2-Q5. There's also these really cool chrome 3PO units and the more common RA-7 protocol droids manning control panels. You can also find the Imperial ITO interrogation droid seen in episode 4 flying around the prison chambers. On that note, countless movie references are across each map of the Death Star, the prison sector being one of the more unique ones since it has the prison cell Princess Leia was in, the blaster left by Han Solo, and the iconic coloring different to the rest of the map. Also, the green laser beam is a staple of the map which automatically fires every minute or so. And although the reboot's version doesn't look as cool, it is more accurate to what was shown in episode 4. Plus, the tractor beam room from the reboot really captures the insane height depicted from the films and has a crossable walkway kinda similar to the grappling hook scene. You can also make Lord Vader say this in the meeting room.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
And the original's hangar bay even included the secret closet where the droids hid in while the stormtroopers searched the room. Plus, it's really cool seeing the Death Star in such detail. The reboot's map really makes it feel like a live space moon, especially when comparing the size to other capital ships around it. By far one of the most iconic maps in the game. Scarif in Rogue One was filmed in the Maldives, so it has some of the best beaches in the Battlefront franchise, including some crustaceans crawling on the sand. Plus, there's 3 daytime variations of the map, the best being either sunset or the clear blue skies, especially when looking at it from outer space. Down on the planet's surface, you'll find a bunch of references to the movies, including the big towers with the rail speeders, but you can't really ride them since the tracks will eventually zap you, as well as the bunkers with some data holocrons inside. Plus, this DLC introduced the U-Wing as a gunship pickup item, which is pretty cool, but this was only brought back for Yavin 4 in the sequel because Scarif was introduced as a Supremacy exclusive map at the end of the game's live service, so sadly flying the ship is only available in Battlefront 1. In fact, the Scarif update was the last DLC drop for both Battlefront reboots, introducing the fan favorite Shore Troopers for the Imperials and the Brown Rebellion padding worn in Rogue One. Battlefront 1 also got Jyn Erso and Director Krennic as playable heroes, but sadly were never brought over to the sequel, probably because they look too similar to regular infantry. This was also why they didn't add Stormtrooper Han and Luke skins, even though it would have been easy, and probably was the same in the original since these skins were actually in the beta of the game. The beta version of the Death Star map had some interesting differences. The laser beam reactor looked pretty strange compared to the final version, and there's a Millennium Falcon sitting in the hangar. Plus, unusable code of Ben Kenobi are still in the game with recorded voice lines that match his younger counterpart.
This is going better than I expected.
This is going better than I expected.
He was most likely intended to be the hero for the Death Star in the Galactic Civil era, like how Obi-Wan is for the Clone Wars era. And if he was added, it probably would have changed Palpatine to Vader as well, instead of being the villain for both eras. Although Scarif follows the current canon of how the Rebels stole the Death Star plans, the original's campaign mission Prison Break was the older take on Rogue One's story. After some Rebels successfully escaped their prison cells thanks to the help of a captive Jedi, they managed to steal some holocrons containing the plans of the Death Star. While some plans were recovered and the prison uprising stopped, this incident ultimately did lead to the destruction of the Death Star soon after. Interesting how different the two stories were. Although the Death Star map was introduced in Battlefront 2, it was used in the first game as a power-up for the Empire in Galactic Conquest, where if you win 4 battles in a row, you can select any planet to blow up, erasing them from the game board. But this power-up was removed in the sequel. In fact, you can't even play the Death Star map in Galactic Conquest, even though they clearly made a model for it as seen in the campaign missions. Interestingly, players actually use the Death Star laser beam in the campaign of Battlefront Elite Squadrons to destroy an Imperial starship, which is pretty cool. But on instant action, you're only allowed to use the ion cannon behind the main laser to shut down the shields of the capital ships, which is a shame. And on a cool side note, the game tells you the population of each campaign mission's planet, which is crazy to think Luke instantly killed millions of people using the Force and some iron torpedoes. There's so many places you can glitch through walls or walk across open air zones in the original Death Star map. The biggest being the prison glitch where you have to crouch and walk into this corner, which gives you access to the entire inside of the map. Shout out to user Battlefront 2005, which is where I found this glitch. Using this glitch, if you go to the Death Star laser beam area, not only will you get a better view of it firing, but you'll find a bunch of secret triangles underneath the reactor for some reason. And as an FYI, to survive the trash compactor, just jump on top of the trash. The reboot also has amazing out-of-bound glitches that let you get a better look at the inner workings of this already complicated map. All tutorials of these glitches are from Vader Gamer's channel, but probably my favorite is the R2 glitch, where you press all ability buttons over a hero pickup item, which will allow you to become R2 and a hero at the same time. Using other out-of-bounds glitches gives you the ability to place R2 in some hilarious places, since he technically can't die. Kinda crazy how this is even in the game, but still really cool. Looking closer at the control screens reveals a few hidden Easter eggs. This is one of the images shown when the Death Star locks in aim and is about to fire, while for some reason Battlefront 2 has a control panel showing off highlighted icons of prequel ships. Not sure why, but yeah. There's also a lot of Urabesh on different poles and boxes, some of which translate to actual words and sentences, which is pretty cool, while other times it's just a bunch of gibberish. Some other cool details around the map include this gas tank that'll blow up if you shoot it enough times, and for some reason K3POs are scattered around the map even though they're from Hoth. In fact, there's so much more hidden secrets in that map across the Battlefront franchise.